building a bit on, I know we touched a bit about the time to market for early stage companies, etc. But in my mind, as well, security and observability can't be afterthoughts. But I also get the point when I talk to people like, yeah, right now we're just prototyping, we just want to go to market as quickly as possible. Specifically for Kubernetes environments, are there any pitfalls where you say that, oh, okay, I'm going to implement observability 1 year down the road, maybe, right? What's your take on that?
There's scenarios where it makes sense. I mean, I'm a realist at the end of the day. I'm pragmatic, right? So if you have an application and it's running in production, and you're a year away from even having customers accessing that application in production. Right now, it's just internal dev teams. And if something crashes and goes down, there's no impact whatsoever, then yeah, I wouldn't invest in building out observability for that. I would invest in the developer experience. How fast can developers do code changes? Or how fast are they working? What's their iteration cycle like? I would look at tools there like Okteto, for example. I would try and look at different stuff in that space. I wouldn't really focus too hard on building out the perfect observability system for something that's not even running in production yet. So it doesn't always make sense. But I think one thing that also now speaking from my hat as a co-founder, like everyone speaks about the MVP, the minimal viable product. But what people sometimes forget is the V. It has to be viable. And it has to be viable from a security perspective too. Like if I'm doing an MVP and my MVP is exposing credit card information, that's not an MVP. It's not viable from a security perspective. So when you take viability into account, and when you build that MVP out, you have to make sure it's viable. Now, what viability means differs depending on the stage. So at some stages, it's viable without having that observability. If it's processing no real production data yet, and there's no customer data on there, then maybe in terms of security, there's a little more leeway in terms of viability. And if no enterprises are using it, then you probably don't need an OAuth integration. But it really depends on where you're at. But it does have to be viable from a security perspective and from an observability perspective as well.
That's a really cool way to look at it. I like the analogy in terms of the viable, different, and I think it all comes down to the takeaway, the contextualization, right? So you have to contextualize where you are in your journey, and depending on what that V means in terms of that, you have to implement the right sort of tools. I've still seen cases where people, yeah, you rightly pointed out, where sometimes there are some you overlook some of the viabilities in terms of the security, and then there's this technical debt that you incur. Something bad happens, and then everyone just wants to do security, and at that point, it's a bit hard, and it's a lot more friction to implement those things. But yeah, it makes sense that you contextualize how you move along.